Hello, everyone. My name is Suzara. I am the Graduate Student Fellow for the Berkeley Food Institute. We want to first begin by taking a moment to recognize that Berkeley sits on the territory of Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the historic and sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Mawikma Ohlone tribe and other familiar descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community has benefited and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868. Consistent with our values of community and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold the University of California, Berkeley more accountable to the needs of American Indian and Indigenous peoples. Now I'll introduce our first speaker, after which I'll introduce the second speaker for today's panel called Celebrating Berkeley Food Institute Alumni. John Castasa, our first speaker, will offer welcome remarks. Mr. Casazza is a Berkeley alum who graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in 1977, and currently he is a consultant in sustainable agriculture development and food systems, agriculture production, and food system analysis.
Great, well, thank you, Jesus. Yeah, good evening and welcome to the third event in the Berkeley Food Institute Food System Career Panel Series, where tonight's speakers will focus on their careers in agriculture, food, and land-based relations. As Jesus said, my name is John Casazza, and I graduated from the College of Natural Resources in 1977 with a degree in soil science and plant nutrition. It was a time when the organic agriculture was in its beginning and a class titled Urban Garden Ecosystems, a class held at the newly developed Student Organic Garden at the Oxford Tract. After Berkeley, I started a 2-year stint in the Peace Corps in Honduras that led to a 22-year career in ag production, farming, food systems analysis, and development. I retired from working full-time in 2004 and started working as an independent consultant in ag development. It was also when the College of Natural Resources asked me to lead the board of directors of the newly formed CNR Alumni Association. Significant concerning tonight's events, since the CNR Alumni Association and the Berkeley Food Institute cooperated to introduce what would become the BFI Career Panel Series that we're all enjoying tonight. So to me, a degree and diploma from UC Berkeley are recognized worldwide. I consider them to be the most significant assets that led to a lifelong career in sustainable ag development. My advice to all is use your time at Berkeley to gain experience in what you plan to do upon graduation. Get involved in activities that expand your knowledge and pursue your dreams. Enjoy the rest of the panel and thank you.
Thank you, John. Now I'll introduce our second speaker and our moderator for today's panel, Dr. Federico Castillo. Dr. Castillo is a researcher and lecturer at UC Berkeley's Environmental Science, Policy and Management Department. He is also the co-lead for the Latinx and Environment Initiative at Cal. The initiative aims at providing resources for Latinx students to engage in and research to share outcomes with community-based organizations. Take it away.
Thank you, Jesus, and good afternoon, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here. I want to thank the Berkeley Food Institute for asking me to participate and to engage with these great panelists that we have here, which I'm sure we'll have plenty to share with the audience. I'm going to introduce the panelists, at which point after that, each of them will have a few minutes to discuss and share with you their knowledge and what they do with the audience. And after that, we will have a Q&A component, the Q&A component of the event. I want to introduce you first to Callie Feiereisel. And I apologize, Kali. I don't mean to, I just didn't know how to pronounce your name. I hope I didn't do too bad. Kali provides food safety technical assistance to farmers as they further develop their practices to meet new requirements. In addition to her background in diversified vegetable production, she studied food and agriculture policy and local food systems while completing her graduate degree in public health nutrition from UC Berkeley. And when she is not out on a farm in the field doing field work, which she enjoys greatly, Kali also enjoys skiing the Sierra slopes and cooking all the delicious bounty California growers provide for our tables. And they do provide a delicious bounty for all of us. Mackenzie Feldman, Bachelor in Science 18, is the founder and executive director of Herbicide-Free Campus, an organization with the mission of eliminating herbicide use at schools. While at UC Berkeley, she was the UC Global Food Initiative Student Ambassador and the co-founder of the Herbicide-Free campaign. And upon graduating, Mackenzie has gone the extra mile and expanded her campaign of pesticide-free or herbicide-free across the UC system. So that resulting then on a entire University of California system going glyphosate-free. The herbicide-free campus is now has now campaigns in many schools in 10 states. And in addition to that, Mackenzie worked with a coalition to get herbicides banned from every public school in Hawaii. I just cannot stress enough how important her work is, and I'm sure we all benefit from that great effort that she is undertaking. Carolina Prado, PhD 17. Carolina is an assistant professor in the San Jose State University. She has worked on the intersection of community-based research, environmental justice, and border studies for the last 7 years. As a first-generation queer Chicana, she believes that her struggles for social and environmental justice should create an impact on both sides of the border. Her current work is using environmental justice mapping indices in the US as a guide to create a spatial analysis of environmental inequality in the border city of Tijuana, Mexico. This is a complex endeavor, as our border with Mexico is indeed a very dynamic and I would say extremely intellectually complicated place to understand, as environmental justice there is at the center of the livelihoods of those who live on both sides of the border. She is also passionate about food justice and anti-domestic violence work. Two issues that we often overlook have a strong relationship. Aileen Suzara, Masters of Public Health, 2015, has dedicated over 14 years on working for food, environmental, and social justice. She envisions healthy food systems as intrinsic to healthy communities. As a chef and educator, Aileen launched the food project Sariwa, which means fresh in Tagalog, at San Francisco La Cocina, using the medium of communal meals to recenter ancestral food wisdom and link with the small growers of color. Her work has been recognized by Bon Appetit and Healthish, and she is currently a fellow with the Castanea Fellowship's inaugural cohort for food and racial justice. Her community affiliations include the Asian American Farmers Alliance, Mothers to Mothers Postpartum Justice Project, and Sama Sama Cooperative. She is the daughter of migrant Filipino healthcare workers. She was shaped by Hawaii's and makes home in the Bay Area. I cannot overlook, you all see their background of our panelists, their work for community and the well-being of our communities. And I think we could not have a better group of individuals to share with us their wisdom, their work, what they do. And I hope that the audience engage with them as much as time allows. I am now going to give, or we are going to give 5 minutes to each of our panelists to share their experiences. We will start with Cali. Cali, please go ahead, take it away.
Thank you very much, Federico, and to BFI for hosting this event and inviting me to be a part of it. Before I dive into a little bit of my background, I just want to acknowledge that I currently reside on stolen land from the Nisenan people outside of what is now Grass Valley, California, in the foothills. I have a few pictures that I'm going to screen share if this works, if tech is on my side today. So my name is Kaylee, and I am a farmer, and as well as wearing a number of other hats. I grew up in the Midwest near Chicago, and during undergraduate studies, studied international studies, anthropology, public health, and sustainability. And then I moved out to California to learn how to farm because I learned a lot about how the food system was, and I didn't know how to grow a single vegetable. I had never grown anything growing up. So I thought the first place to start would be to learn how to grow some food and then figure out what kind of job or career path I would want to take. So I was a full-time farmer for a number of years out at a farm, actually not too far from where I currently reside. It's a 20-acre organic vegetable farm called the Mountain Bounty Farm. And that was a really transformative experience, just being really connected to the land and tied into the seasons and learning how to grow food and manage people and help serve our community with supplying a lot of food every day or in each week. That farm mainly has a community supported agriculture, or a CSA program. So there were at that time about 500 boxes that went out to families around in various communities within a couple hours drive from that farm. After working at the farm for a number of years, I loved it, but I was left feeling like I wanted a little bit more. And so I was fortunate to attend the UC Berkeley graduate public health program, and specifically the nutrition focused area. So I went to Berkeley for a couple of years and got my graduate degree in public health with a focus in local and regional food systems and food and ag policy, specifically like sustainable agriculture policy. And there was where I had the opportunity to work at the Berkeley Food Institute as a graduate student researcher and be immersed in food and ag policy and state policy on that front and some federal policy. So that was a really transformative experience, and learned a lot about how policy is a really complicated system, and there's a lot of levers at play, and a lot of grassroots efforts really make a difference in swaying and changing policy changes. And then I finished graduate school, and I found my current job, which I'm at, which is at Community Alliance with Family Farmers, or CAF, which is a nonprofit organization that is based in California. It has been around for over 40 years, and we help support small family farmers with on-the-ground programs and policy advocacy in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. So at CAF, I'm the Farmer Services Director currently, and so we help provide, as Federico mentioned in my introduction, food safety technical assistance to small farmers so that they're in compliance with regulations, as well as helping with marketing. And then recently with COVID, there's been a lot of need to help farmers adjust to e-commerce sales and navigating online transactions, things of that nature. So I lead that program with a few other excellent teammates there. In addition, I can't get away from farming. So I also have my own small farm on the side called Seed and Gather. And it's a small farm focused on value-added products, which mainly consist of flour products at this point. You see me there last year, mainly focused on dried flowers. So hanging flowers that I grow and then drying them. And then I sell wreath kits that are certain styles. There's some on the wall behind me. And so I ship wreath kits around the country to folks that have instructions and all the flowers and all the supplies to make your own wreath kit with sustainably grown flowers. And that's just a picture of my wreath rainbow drying ceiling from last year that brings me a lot of joy. So I wanted to share that with all of you. I know I'm probably getting close on time. So this is just a few pictures of my daughter, Mabel, and I, that she's been bringing us a lot of joy during the last 6 months. And I'm happy to talk more in the question and answer about kind of my career path. I guess the one thing I would say to all of you is that even now I've had a kind of wandering career. Looking backwards, it makes complete sense, all the steps along the way that I've wandered through to get to where I am now. And it makes total sense. But even I, and this job I'm in now, don't necessarily know where I'm going to be in 5 years. And so to just keep following your heart and lean into opportunities that make way as far as working in the food system, because there's lots of different hats that people can wear and roles you can take. I was trained in public health in kind of a more formal setting, but I work in agriculture, which is actually really important. I think folks in the community health realm recognize how important food and food access and food related topics are. So I'm often the only kind of health trained person in these ag fields, but I invite more folks out there, if you're kind of interested in my path and my kind of health oriented, but then working in the ag field, there's space for you there, and please come be a part of it.
Thank you, Kaylee. We're gonna have questions for our panelists after we have all the presentations from each of them. I wanna move on to Mackenzie. Mackenzie, you have the mic, you have the floor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kaylee. I really resonate with what you're saying at the end about, when you're starting out, not knowing where your path will lead, and then kind of looking back after and feeling like it did all make sense and all those pieces kind of led you in the direction that you're going. So, because for me, I graduated in 2018 and I had no idea that I would be doing what I'm doing now. Like Federico said, I am the executive director and founder of a nonprofit called Herbicide-Free Campus. And we work with students around the country and give them the tools and resources to bring this herbicide-free campaign to their campus, work with groundskeepers, and work to eliminate the spraying of herbicides and move towards organic land care on their campuses. And I studied food systems, and I didn't exactly know that, this is where my path will lead, but I think I'll just, talk to you a little bit about how I got there. And for those of you who are still in school and have no idea what you're going to do, I would say that is totally okay, because realistically, that's where a lot of people are. And I think exactly what Kaylee said, if you just follow your passion, you will, find what you're meant to do. So yeah, I got recruited to UC Berkeley to play on the beach volleyball team. Didn't know that food systems was something that you could study. I was gonna study business because I didn't know what else to do, but I couldn't do any of the classes because they conflicted with my practice schedule. So I ended up randomly taking edible education, and it totally inspired and changed the trajectory of my life. And I realized like food systems was something that you could study, and I ended up majoring in society and environment and minoring in food systems. And when I was a junior, I showed up for beach volleyball practice one day, and our coach had said, if the ball rolls off the court, just let it go, because an herbicide was just sprayed everywhere around the court. And at this point, I knew about the toxicity of herbicides because of what I was learning in school. And I grew up in Hawaii, and as many of you might not know, Hawaii is ground zero for industrial agriculture, and the majority of the GMO corn seeds are grown and tested in Hawaii. So there are all these big agrochemical companies are spraying an immense amount of pesticides to test the seeds resistance, and you just see cancer clusters and a lot of birth defects and all of these things from the chemicals. So when I was growing up, I witnessed all these activists that were standing up against the corporations and trying to get them out. So when I was at practice, me and my teammate Bridget were really fired up, and we wanted to do something about this. So we met with the athletics grounds manager, and we said, what are you spraying? Can you not spray this here? You know, we're young women and in reproductive age with skin exposed, and it was rainy season, and you don't know where these chemicals, you know, go. And he was totally cool about it. And he just said, sure, I'll stop spraying, but I just don't have the staff to pick the weeds by hand. So if you guys could help me, that would be great. And so from then on, our team just started picking the weeds, and it was really simple. And then, what he was spraying was Ranger Pro, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, the active ingredient is glyphosate, and it had been declared a year earlier. This was in 2017, or it was declared in 2015 a probable carcinogen. So we felt really pumped up that we were able to, you know, get it banned from the courts. And then we took this model to the rest of UC Berkeley's campus and worked with the ground staff to, you know, make Memorial Glade and Faculty Glade organic. And we started a student group, and we passed student resolutions and all this stuff. And so when I graduated, there's a lot of interest from students that wanted to bring this campaign to their school. So now this past year, we've been working with around 20 schools, and this year we've kind of changed into an accelerator model, and we've just honed in and we're taking just a couple of our schools. We're going to focus on 6 of them and really put all of our resources into helping them become herbicide free, and then be able to work with other schools after that want to take this. So I'll pop a link in the chat about this organization, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mackenzie. It's amazing how one moment at volleyball practice just basically provide you space and a moment and a reflection to do all the good work that you're doing. I'm sure everybody here is impressed with that. I want to pass now the mic to Carolina Prado. Carolina, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to also share my screen. Let me just quickly go there. Oh, it's telling me that I can't screen share. Do you think I can get the permission? Oops.
From my end, it says that you should be able to.
Okay, let me try again. Sorry, y'all. Can you see? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Carolina Prado. I always start my little intros with these 2 pictures, as I really believe in, the places where you are from shaping you and the things that you want to do and spend your time on. I grew up in Santa Ana, which is a city in Orange County in Southern California. But my family is from a small town in central Mexico called Tala in the state of Jalisco. And both these places have really worked to shape me as a person. I also like my little spread because I'm a big repper of community college and the Cal State system. I went to community college and to San Diego State University in my undergrad. And then as in my time at San Diego State, I'm just going to skip to this slide because it shows a little bit of my trajectory. In my time at San Diego State, I went on what's called a toxic tour of environmental justice issues in the city of Tijuana, which is right on the other side of the border from San Diego. And we went to this site that was what used to be what's in this picture here on the right, which is an abandoned battery recycling plant that was owned by a San Diego company and sort of just abandoned after it was shut down by Profepa, which is the Mexicans' EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. And this community, the picture here on the left, is a group of people who organized for a decade to get this site remediated. The site was left with 25,000 tons of hazardous waste that was being washed down into the community where most of these folks lived and caused a whole deal of health impacts. And the story of this site really resonated or impacted me in a really important way because it really made me think about my sort of commitment and interest in environmental issues, but also my identity and my commitment as a bicultural and bilingual Chicana to really understand sort of the kinds of issues that sort of link both sides of my identity. And after going on this toxic tour, I reached out to the folks from this colectivo. They used to be called Colectivo Chilpancingo. Their name is Colectivo Salud y Justicia Ambiental, or the Collective for Environmental Health and Justice now, to see what kind of project I can work on with them. And sort of what I did for my senior thesis in undergrad ended up becoming what would be my dissertation in the next couple of years after I went on this tour. So I did my dissertation on this case study of metales derivados in the Environmental Science Policy and Management program at UC Berkeley. And while I was there, I really had, I feel like I had a pretty disciplined commitment to wanting to be a professor. I've always loved teaching. I think even as a little kid, I would, decorate my room with those little borders that they put in elementary school classrooms and, force my younger siblings to listen to me. I really wanted to be, take the role of a teacher. And as I started going through my graduate program, I realized that I loved teaching and also really loved doing research in a way that impacted sort of the real world and the issues that are important to me. And so my role with BFI, I think, is really interesting because I was almost done with my PhD program. And again, I had my mindset to wanting to teach and that being my only option as a career. I did the Berkeley Food Institute Fellowship in 2016 with a Oakland food justice organization called Fat Beats Produce to evaluate their community supported agriculture program. And through that, I created these short videos around the farmers that are supply the vegetables to the community supported agriculture program, and also did a whole evaluation of the program itself and how it can be improved. And I think one of the things, other than learning about all these farmers that I had been eating their food for so long and going to interview them and talk to them about their stories, something that really helped me understand was that I didn't need to be set on my path of I can only do academia and that's it. And from that, this was my first collaboration with an organization outside of the organization I worked on for my dissertation. And it really kind of helped open my eyes to the fact that there are a lot of different organizations that do a lot of really good work that can really benefit from research and the kinds of skills that I have as a researcher. And since this collaboration, I've worked on other, I know I maybe too many pictures here, but I worked on some other collaborations with other organizations around research to really kind of feed into different advocacy programs and campaigns to make material conditions better for people in different communities. A couple of years ago, I did this project with the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity around the ICE detention facility in West County. And after these, after I graduated from, I'm just gonna stay here. After I graduated from UC Berkeley, I decided to try to work in the nonprofit world so that I didn't have to be so stuck on my sort of academic path. And I spent a year working at the Environmental Health Coalition in San Diego, and it really was super valuable for me to learn all the things that I love about nonprofit work, and also the things that I missed from teaching and academic work. And now today I'm in my third year of being a professor at San Jose State. I have my little list here of the things that I do, the classes I teach, and some of the research I do with master students in my department. I think I might be close to time, but I think that just like other folks were saying, having sort of like a windy path and not feeling like you have to be stuck to one path only, I think was really important for me to really try to scope out what are the different kinds of impacts that I can have and ways, different places that I can be happy in. I'll stop there. Thank you, and sorry if I went over time.
Thank you, Carolina. What a great way of, as you put it, there is not a straight line. We all have our own paths, and the work that you do, no matter what the path you have taken, is of great benefit to society and to all of us, and it's amazing. So I want to move now to our last panelist, Aileen. Aileen, you have the mic.
Hi, everyone. Wow, you know, when you're the last person, you kind of just want to hear everyone else. I have so many questions for everyone else, but I'm just really glad to be here tonight. I'm going to share a couple of pictures, and so fingers crossed that this will work out. And just let me know if it's working. All right. This look good? Are folks able to see this?
That's good.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here, and I resonate with so many of the threads that have been raised already. But just to share a bit about myself, my name is Aileen. I'm living in Richmond in the East Bay, and I was at the BFI as a graduate student while I was doing my master's in public health nutrition. But I did want to begin the journey kind of sharing around these entry points that some of you who are listening in tonight might be considering as you embark on your own careers and educational journeys. For me, you know, when I was a child, which I think is sometimes a time when we have very clear visions for the future, even if we're not sure how to get there, I was absolutely certain at like 7 or 8 years old that I wanted to be a chef, a farmer, and a doctor. Little did I know that in the future, there would be so many opportunities in food systems. I just knew what intrinsically felt right for me. And yet it took me years to find my way back there. I really resonated with our last panelist who shared about environmental justice work. For me, my transformative years were from growing up in Hawaii on the Big Island and also in California, and with the families that were migrants from the Philippines. I began a lot of my political awakening and activism when I was an undergrad working on demilitarism campaigns and environmental justice solidarity work, because I was so motivated then to figure out, you know, how as a Filipino American living in the belly of the beast, could I connect to my, you know, family's history and heritage, but also, you know, look at this legacy of toxics and environmental injustices that were leading to so many health disparities in communities around the world. But that said, I also kept this torch for food and the stories of food and cookbooks and recipes and all these very juicy things, and try to find a way to weave these worlds together. And I think that was kind of the trajectory that took me into food work. So, So as I've considered my career in different phases and on this kind of winding path, I want to share a couple of questions for you here tonight. Once I was asked a question that haunted me for years and actually pushed me early on to spend 2 years training in organic farms around the Central Coast. I had been asked who was the most recent person in my family to grow food. And that was a question that made me take a really deep look to try to understand why, you know, my family's agrarian history was distant, although it was only 1 generation away. So I share that question with you tonight. Another personal question that drove my path was this question of who gets to define what is healthy food. For me, having, you know, walked in different paths around, you know, environmental health, but also community health, nutrition, and food systems, I think that we have a deep need to decolonize what is considered healthy food and how it's portrayed in the spaces of nutrition and public health. There's a lot of important foundational work that we can rest on. But for me, I really dug into this question of, you know, disease and health, and how we need to really grapple with healthy food as something that communities are empowered to define for themselves. And the other question that I think is, you know, always important, but especially now during this time of COVID, I've often reflected on what are the ancestral memories or practices that can sustain us in crisis and show us the way forward. And so I offer that question tonight because we're at a time of the food system and health disparities and racial inequities that have really, I think, been going through a deep reckoning process, things that people have already been addressing, but I think that all of us are positioned to tap into an inner well of wisdom and understanding to find a different way forward. And I guess the last thing, and then I'll try to zoom forward, is I can't be here tonight, you know, without being able to pay homage to how I ended up in this path trying to bridge food and health. My mom was a healthcare worker, nurse who migrated in the 60s, which has its own history here. But I really look to her and the legacies of my family as paving a way forward, trying to reconnect to the family roots that are in the Philippines and making sense of them living in the diaspora, for me was an entry point into connecting to food systems work and food justice work here. So for me, when I was moving between food paths about 10 years ago, I'd started off leaving what had been an environmental justice and environmental educator role, and I decided to become a chef. It felt right, it felt real, and I ended up spending several years in the back of house cooking and also trying to develop menus, recipes, and idea of what kinds of Filipino foods could be centered around this conversation for health and healing. And that led me to several years of farming. But eventually, zooming forward a little bit, it actually brought me to Berkeley. I was so deeply satisfied, working directly with food and putting my hands and body into that work. And I also, maybe somewhat similar to Kaylee, your responses, I felt this longing to find a connection to policy and advocacy work and figuring out how these very personalized community narratives could also make sense in informing these bigger structures and policies and systems around us. So that led me, I think, to where my focal point has been for the past several years. Recovering, is this movement around understanding food as medicine and the healing potential of food when we're looking at different health disparities. I wanted to find a way to recenter, communities of color in that conversation and many of the food practices we already have. Before COVID, I was at the time, working as a chef. I'd incubated a food business that was actually really developed while I was still a grad student at Berkeley. I'd been looking at how could a pop-up restaurant / educational space / communal meal be a vehicle for public health, and doing so in a way that celebrated stories and heritage crops. So this looked like bringing people together, which seems almost unthinkable right now. This was the last pop-up I did before COVID and also before I gave birth to my daughter. And so I look back at this time as a touchstone. And one other image I wanted to share was, this was actually at Berkeley. Some of you might be familiar with the MLK Hall. I had been part of the first wave of La Cocina pop-ups that came there and was using this as a testing ground to reconnect to our Berkeley community and be able to look at a vehicle for food enterprise as a way to connect with community, connect with students, and try to make these very tangible physical bridges between healing, food, and a learning space. Mm-hmm. So many things have changed during COVID, and I bring these, I know that we're probably thinking about COVID all the time, but I do want to share this since I imagine some of you might be figuring out where your path might lie in this changing world that we're in right now. For me, this was a question that emerged from one of the spaces I'm connected to, which is a language, food, land, and ecology summer camp that's centering Filipino families and youth. I bring this question to you today, have all the questions, is what do you think our ancestors are trying to communicate with us about resistance these days? For me, during this time of changing careers, changing pandemic pivots, I've returned to this to really take me to my next question. Is any of us engaged in this food work? What kind of legacy do we want to pass on? So I wanted to share a picture of my daughter because it's important to bring in cute pictures. That's my baby, Ela, and she's about 1.5 years old right now. And for me, as I've considered this path in food, it's taking winding twists and turns. But the central point that I want to focus on is how can we tap into the inner wisdom that we may be carrying in our lineages, in our community wisdom, however we define that, and really use that to shape the food future that we want to move into next. And I really encourage all of you, to find the things that spark you and make you come alive. The world is going to keep changing, but everyone is resilient enough to try to find something new and another way forward. And I hope that you'll really listen to that inner voice that's going to give you a lot of guidance.
Thank you, Aileen. What a great way to close our panelists' participation. Can I ask for all the panelists to turn the cameras on, please, as we move on to the Q&A part of the activity? And I'm just amazed at how you are able to connect your ancestors and those who came before you, Aileen, to the activities that you do today. and I'm sure to the ones that you plan for the future. So thank you for sharing that experience with us. I've been asked to ask a question to the panelists that is sort of common to what you do. And I have decided to ask a question that deals with overcoming the obstacles that you all face in achieving the goals that you have set out to do. You either face obstacles that are bureaucratic. Sometimes there is somebody who tells you, I don't think that the idea is going to fly with a funder, but you still think it is good and you just go for it. I'm sure you have found yourself in similar situations. I have found myself in similar situations. So I want you to share with us, in terms of overcoming these obstacles, what is about networking or partnering with others who share your passions that helps you overcome these obstacles. And I think that this is important for the audience, because all of you have shared with us extremely, impactful ideas and activities, and overcoming these obstacles and finding partners that work with you, that move the ship in the same direction that you is important, I think. So could you share with us some of your experiences in partnerships and overcoming obstacles for those things that you do, that you're passionate about? And I will invite any of you to take the mic and run with it. But we'd love to hear a little bit from each of you, of course. We do have questions from the audience as well. So, I'm gonna point the finger to one of you.
I'll go. I think that the partnerships and the collaborations are super important for pointing which way to go when you're stuck. I feel like I think that there are a lot of issues with, probably if you look at any social issue or environmental issue, there's a lot of roadblocks when it comes to getting policy action, getting people to be accountable, getting the funds that people need really to have their, again, like I said, their material conditions change. And I think that the collaborations and the partnerships with other people, other individuals and other organizations, for me, has really helped me to, like not get stuck in that. I feel like for myself, when things like that happen, I like usually just kind of stay in my pit of rage, I like to call it. And I feel like other people being in partnerships really helps kind of be like, all right, we're done with that. Like, let's move to the next, problem solving place. And so I think that that's always just like the ability to have so many more ideas for how to problem solve, I think is one of the things that helps me kind of overcome that barrier.
Any other panelists want to pitch in on this idea of partnership and overcoming obstacles? Or maybe you want to share experience where you actually move the ship forward or move your activity forward with?
Yeah, I can kind of talk a little bit about our work with groundskeepers. So at Herbicide-Free Campus, like what we've really learned is that, you have to come at it. Groundskeepers who are spraying herbicides, it's easy to kind of point fingers and say that they're the bad people. And what we really try and teach our students is that if you ever want to make change, you really have to come at it with an offer to help. And that's why we really emphasize weeding days and students, really offering whatever platform that they have at a university to help the groundskeepers. Because at the end of the day, if you pass a policy to eliminate herbicides, that work is going to fall the hardest on the groundskeepers and will probably mean more physical labor. And actually at Berkeley, the groundskeepers had to hire a physical trainer to do yoga with them 3 times a week now, because they are pulling weeds more. And that's just, and that's what they're doing. But yeah, and I think sometimes it's really tough because people don't want to change, especially hearing from students that are telling them how to do their job. But at the end of the day, it's, groundskeepers are at the front lines. They're the ones that are exposed the most. They're often, people of color, same with anyone in a landscape role and farm workers. And so we have to do our best to support the people that are getting the most exposure.
Yeah. Thanks, Mackenzie. I mean, so key. That goes to show that if you convince a key stakeholder that is impacted by what you do, you probably will succeed and achieve your goals. In this case, groundskeepers, right? Like you said, they're at the forefront. I don't know, Aileen, want to share something or
Yeah, I guess I'll just say briefly, and this is very ironic for me to say, but it's a good reminder for myself to just have patience with the process. And when you do come up against unsurmountable, like the number of challenges you will in your career and in your positions along the way, to just remind yourself to have patience and try and support yourself in a community that is supportive and that you know, even if you're not currently in a job that is your ideal job, you know, you maybe are part of clubs or other extracurricular activities that are more aligned with where you want to head, or you're volunteering somewhere that you do want to work at, and then you can start to weave your way into other positions.
Mhm. Thank you. Any other of the panelists want to say something else, or we have quite a few questions on the Q&A from the audience, so we can move to that. Kevin and Jesus, perhaps
Yeah.
want to take over?
Before we move to audience Q&A, I just want to ask the audience if you have any feedback to share. I'm going to share a link in the chat, and please feel free to provide us any feedback for our future career panels here at BFI. And thank you for joining. We really appreciate you. I have a question for Aileen. Daniela asks, what was the transition like from research academia to cooking in the kitchen? Do you think formal culinary training is necessary to accomplish what you have done?
Sure, I'll take a stab on this, and I imagine, especially for others who might have had an entrepreneurial element to theirs, might have something to pitch in aligned with that. For me, I came from, I think, activism, then to cooking, and then to research academia, and then back to cooking. So for me, I guess maybe the question of how to approach this work, I really think that sometimes if there's work that you're doing and you are not quite sure where to turn to, I looked for mentorship, and I looked for a space that could push me to grow, but also give me room to define a path. And so for me, that was developing a concept, making sure it was something that was relevant to the communities that I wanted to serve, and that it had that behind it, and that my heart was also aligned with the values behind it, and then sought out support from an incubator. And I think I just want to point this out. There's so much, communities that make all of our work possible. And I think for me, always remembering that we're never individuals in this work, but that it's really resting on many sources of support and wisdom sharing that's important.
Thank you for that, Aileen. I have another question for Aileen, Kaylee, and it asks, how did you figure out your focus area for graduate research, and how much did you consider potential job paths when thinking about that focus area?
I can just briefly start that. When looking at graduate degrees and graduate programs, I looked at the different professors that were the core professors in programs and saw what their research priorities seemed to be with what they were working on, and was attracted to a few of the professors at Berkeley's public health nutrition program and the work they were doing. Although I kind of was on the fringe of honestly what the program was doing at that time, looking at more of the policy angle, but I think that's a unique trait of Berkeley public health nutrition program, and probably many other programs, that the professors are pretty open to letting students push the boundaries on research. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Carolina, you or Aileen, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think that I came into graduate school kind of having a project in hand, which it seemed kind of rare in comparison to my colleagues in the department. And that just happened to be because of this experience I had in undergraduate and the relationships I built with that. And I do think like what I was saying, I had a little bit too much of a path dependency on my job path as a professor, but I do think that my time working with FAPEATS really opened up the possibility of not just doing academic work. And I still feel like even if I didn't end up staying as a professor, I probably could do things that make me happy and that I think are important in the nonprofit world as well.
And I'll just briefly chime in. I came in with a pretty focused idea of an area of graduate research. I knew I was looking for a place to really explore the connections of community health and reconnecting to traditional foodways as part of a public health intervention. That said, things change in graduate school, and I think what I really, even though I came in with a clear kind of guiding points, I also just took in a lot of unexpected lessons from graduate school and from Berkeley, which included, learning certain skills that I might not have ever thought were as relevant to the work I wanted to do, but ended up shifting and pushing me further along the path. And so I think that's one of the joys of being able to enter, a program at Berkeley is also welcoming the unexpected, because it can sometimes take you further than you thought you might go.
I don't see any more audience Q&As, but Mackenzie, I have a question for you, if that's all right. Did you ever experience any pushback from like university administration or like other like administrations, and how'd you go about dealing with that?
Yeah, definitely. Even once the UCs ended up banning glyphosate, they put together a task force of faculty and weed scientists and doctors and lawyers for this task force to figure out what's the steps going forward for the UC system for herbicide management. And one person on the task force, a weed scientist from UC Davis, ended up writing a letter to the UC president saying to bring back glyphosate and it's not toxic and all these things. So I did a little bit of research and found that he was taking like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars from Monsanto and other agrochemical companies. So tick that to the UC Regents and he ended up getting removed from the task force. But, you see that sort of stuff all the time. I mean, universities get money from these big chemical corporations and just, in general, the decision makers or oftentimes the groundskeepers are trained in a specific way, and that's integrated pest management, which is pesticides are used as a last resort, but there's nothing to stop them from using it as a first resort. Like they're not always taught alternatives to pesticides. Not their fault. It's just like how the training is. And so, there's a lot of pushback. And what ended up getting the UCs to ban glyphosate was fear of liability because of all the glyphosate trials that were happening. So unfortunately, it might not have been human or environmental health, but at the end of the day, the decision was made. So that was good. And I think there's a lot of education that we all can do to educate people around just the intersections of pesticides and how it relates to human health and climate change and environmental health and workers' rights and all these things. And so that's something we definitely want to do more of.
Thank you, Mackenzie. I think for this potential final question, we would like involvement from everyone, including you, Federico, right? So to current, what would y'all say to current Berkeley students, or maybe yourselves, right? What kind of resources would you, take advantage of? What would you recommend current students take advantage of while they're here, right?
I would say that folks take advantage of all of the different resources that Berkeley has for learning different types of skills. I think throughout my time since I've been at Berkeley, I've used all kinds of different things like SPSS, like some basic graphic design work, some basic video editing, coding, like ArcGIS, which I learned at Berkeley. And I think that, whatever it is that your interest is, trying to learn a little bit of different skills that are all available at Berkeley, and seeing, which ones kind of go best with you. I think that was really helpful for me and at my time at Berkeley.
Attending, career panels like this and just really maximizing the opportunities that BFI and other programs at Berkeley provide for you to get exposure and learn about things. And then through those connections, if there's somebody that you meet or an organization you hear of along the way, try and set up informational interviews with folks. While you're a student, it's really hard for people on the other end to say no while you're a student and you just want to, call them up or video interview them for 30 minutes to learn about what they're doing. And while you have your student hat on, that's something you could really take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think if you are not already subscribed to the Student Opportunities newsletter at the BFI, maybe someone can put that in. I used to write that newsletter, and it's not just helpful for students, it's truly helpful for anybody, like nationally, not just even in California. There's tons of cool opportunities, and I think the BFI is just an amazing resource. And hopefully soon events can happen in person, but even online events like this. And I feel like everyone at the BFI is connected to a lot of amazing food systems leaders locally, nationally and even internationally. So I would say, don't be afraid to reach out to people at the BFI and sign up for that newsletter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If I may say what I think we as at least as an undergrad student, and I did not know this when I came to Berkeley first, it took me a couple of years to figure it out, is Berkeley is a research institution. Our faculty does a lot of research. And if you can find a faculty member that you can engage with in a very positive way, that can guide you in doing research or doing activities or presenting posters at undergrad activities and so on and so forth, work with that faculty member, because for good or for bad, and I don't agree with most faculty members that I can think of, but there's quite a few as an undergrad that I thought, oh, that dude, he's got a good idea. I can work with that person. And so kind of develop a mentorship relationship that you can relate to. So my second advice will be engage in research, even as an undergrad. Information is power, and the way to deal with information one way is to do research. And I don't mean writing papers, but doing research means chewing information in a way that benefit communities, that benefit people that you care about. And if you do that, you will take advantage of what Berkeley has to offer, which is exactly that, information. We're an information campus. And so we should take advantage of that, I think.
I think the only thing I would add on +1 to everything that has been shared here, and I will just add that these relationships can last for years. I've been away from Berkeley for quite a few years now, but even now still find ways to tap back in, have found people who are lifelong thought partners, colleagues, friends, and also just a place for continued inspiration. And so, as you have those informational interviews, mentorship, research projects, etc., this is kind of an investment in a long-term web of connections that you might be able to circle back with in unexpected ways in the future. So just keep building and developing these lifelong relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I'd just like to add, I put in the chat, there are 2 programs here at Berkeley that are nationally renowned, the Mcnair Scholars Program and the Mellon Mays Program. Both are academic programs that help you undergrads, as an undergrad, get into grad school. And I myself am a Mcnair scholar, so it's kind of, and currently in a PhD program. So yeah, just want to put that.
If there's nothing else anyone has to add, I'd just like to remind everyone one last time that we have a feedback survey if you'd like to fill that out. And thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time to come and speak to us today. We really appreciate all of you. And to all of our attendees, thank you for joining us for the final BFI career panel of this year. It's been a lot of fun, all of us, if we could all turn our cameras on, to organize all of these. And it's been wonderful to hear all of your stories.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm sure thank you for inviting me. Yes.
All right. Have a good night, y'all.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.